Hi, I am Adrienne Quinn Martin. I am your host for this week's episode of Blue Talk Texas, where we discuss Texas politics with Democratic candidates from across the state. Are y'all hearing me okay? I'm hearing a little bit of an echo.
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay, good. Joining us today is Eugene Howard, candidate for Texas Congressional District 14. Sheena King, candidate for Texas House District 61. And Alex Cornwallis, candidate for State School Board of Education, seat 12. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to have you. We have some really important topics to go over. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts. We'll jump into our discussion, and at the end, we'll give you time to talk about your individual campaigns. And Eugene, we're going to start with you. Are you with us? Maybe Eugene is having a little bit of technical problems. So we'll go ahead and start with Sheena. Sheena, speaking about education and some of the issues that Texas is dealing with education right now, one of the big problems seems to be the way our education system is financed and funded, and a lot of times underfunded. If you were elected to the Texas House, would you support education finance reform, and what would that look like?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it, Adrienne.
Thank you.
It's such a great question. So a little bit of background about me. So I come from a family that has lots of educators. I have lots of friends who also are in the education industry. So this is near and dear to my heart. I'm a product of public schools. And we definitely need to give them the right priority. This funding issue is a topic that's not new. It's been going on for quite a while, and we just keep pushing that or kicking the can down the road. And we really need to address it. And there was a start. There was some pretty comprehensive starts to it in 2019, that legislative session. But this past one just didn't get the right amount of attention. So the funding piece is definitely something that's serious. We need to address the fact that the state needs to do their part in the funding. The lack thereof, what they have been doing is just not sufficient. And it's left then up to the individual local municipalities to be able to do that funding. And that's not fair. That's putting an undue burden on those groups. And really, that's not the way it should be. The state should do more. They should make sure that they have leveraged all of the funding that they have available to them to be able to put that money into the right places. So I know we have lots of questions on this and lots of other thoughts and opinions, but that's, I guess, a start. And I'd be happy to answer a little bit more, allow my fellow panelists to answer as well.
Eugene, are you with us? Can you hear us? Oh, he keeps cutting it in and out. That's too bad. Hopefully he'll get... we'll just give him a few moments. Hopefully he'll get it going. Can you, Sheena, can you give kind of a brief synopsis of how Texas funds education? Because it's really confusing, basically.
Well, really, so there's the state piece of it, and then there's the property taxes. And quite honestly, the state is not equalizing that part, right? They're not putting in enough. And so each of the individual cities, the local municipalities, there's some inequities there, right? Not every single one has the same amount of property taxes that can be put in. And so those schools are not given the proper funding that they need because of that. We don't want to continue to increase property taxes, and that's definitely not something that is advocated. We need the state to do their part and stop reducing the funding and stop reallocating the funding and stop mismanaging the funding. Honestly, it's a really complex topic. I know there's lots of attempts that have been made for it, but really there's no, in my opinion, solution that's been actually pushed forward hard enough. Our schools are suffering. Quality education is something that all of us deserve, whether you have someone who's impacted directly or not. You yourself, as a Texan, we all want quality education. That is the backbone to our economy. We have to help ensure that our students are equipped with the knowledge and information, they have the quality education to be able to then go on and help this economy, help Texas grow and become the state that it needs to be. So there is an investment that we need to make, and we need to prioritize public schools.
And it's kind of my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that the way our system is funded with property taxes, our property taxes are actually being raised under the Republicans, government that we have, to make up for the lack of funding that the state is supposed to be putting in. Is that right?
That's accurate. That's absolutely accurate. Yes.
Okay, Alex, you're running actually for State Board of Education. Can you explain to people that may not know a lot about what the State Board of Education is and what they do?
Sure. And I'll try to describe it as simply as possible, right? And very shortly. It's a long description. So the simplest way to see that is that the State Board of Education sits on top of all the school boards in the district. So what they do is that the state board actually sets all the standards and the curriculum and the books and education materials that your children will study at the school. So they set it up, and then they dispense it to the local school board, and the local school board dispenses it downwards. Now, the state board has other functions too as well. For example, they oversee the graduation requirements, and then oversee the Texas Permanent School Fund, and then sets rules or final review on what educator certification should look like. And then the other thing is about vetoing the charter school approval. But however, everyone talks about the state board's role of setting the curriculum. That is it's everyone's mind. Because this is about choosing the books and the materials that your children will study at school. So the state board sets the universe, the curriculum. These are the materials that you can choose from. And then the local school board goes in there, tweaks it, and dispenses it out. So that's pretty much I would say in a nutshell, to put the role of a state board of education member does.
Okay, and I see Eugene dropped off. Hopefully he'll be back with us, having some technical difficulties. Alex, one of the big things that there's been a lot of talk about in Texas is that our teachers are not feeling the support that they need, especially during the pandemic. Why do you think that they are feeling this way, and how can we fix it?
I agree with you. Teachers are feeling that way, and rightfully so. I mean, if you hear the media, right, to talk about how a teacher is being accused of teaching something they're not even doing, that they're like, for example, CRT and all, and that, and then teachers and educators and librarians are accused of harboring books that are not appropriate for. Those are accusations, and then on top of that, even though the teachers are not given enough resources and salary, there's a lot of expectations from them. You will hear about overcrowded classrooms. You will hear about not enough training materials that are given to the teachers. So they feel overwhelmed. And on top of that, if you look at the salary part of it, Texas is a very rich state. But if you look at the teacher salary, we lag $10,000 on average behind from our peer states. So it's a combination of barrage of insults on the teachers. It's the salary and expectation without giving them the resources. Oh yes, I totally agree. I mean, anyone would feel so. Now, what can we do about that, right? Well, if you look at the salary and recognition part of it, those are time and material issues. They can be fixed. You just have to have the will to do so. And that's why, I'm running, and Sheena and others are running, because at the legislative level, we'll pay attention and we'll make sure that proper funding is given, proper reward system is given to the teachers. So, for example, one of the things that I wanted to mention, how the reward system for teachers are so unfair. The teachers' qualification reward is tied to the performance of the students. Well, at first it seems like, well, it makes sense, but no, not really. Because teachers don't necessarily have full control of the performance of the student, and no fault of the students, of course, right? There's other factors in there. For example, the school facilities, the budget, the background of the teacher, how much work is needed, the curriculum, and all. And a teacher will not have full control of all of those things. So how can you make a teacher responsible for something they don't have full control over? So yes, so that's what we will have to review, the reward system, and reward the teacher appropriately, give them the salary they deserve, give them the resource they deserve, and more importantly, talk about their achievements, highlight their achievements. That is the most important part of it. They're also human, just like all of us. We need encouragement. Everyone needs encouragement. And you can see the result of that not happening. There's a massive amount of teacher shortage that we have because no one wants to go to that profession. So yes, I do know. I feel the way they're doing it. My father was a teacher, and I know that, and I'm very, very closely familiar with it. I just remember a very late night he would check the papers, the student papers, and such a dedication, but yet there wasn't enough salary given to him. So yes, I think once we get elected, we'll fix that. We'll find new sources of funding. We'll make sure the reward system for teachers are fixed, and we'll make sure we highlight their achievement more. That's what we need to do.
It also seems like, well, I don't know that it seems like, I think it's kind of a fact that the GOP strategy right now is almost to target teachers and librarians, I believe, in an overall effort to discredit public education. So yes. I can imagine being a teacher in this climate, they absolutely would not feel support. Did y'all see the Abbott thing that came out this week about the public education rules for public education? I thought it was interesting that at the very bottom of that, you can see that it says political ad paid for by Greg Abbott campaign. So he puts out this statement that kind of looks like an official document, and it's actually a ad. So yeah, it was called Abbott's Rules of Education. So and you can clearly see the focus is on teachers and kind of outrage, and this, I find it interesting or ironic that Texas has been under decades of GOP control, and just now there's all these problems they have with our education system that they've actually been in control of. So
absolutely,
something doesn't really make sense there. Texas public schools are among the most diverse in the entire nation. Of the 5.4 million Texas students, 52% are Hispanic, 27% are white, and 13% are Black. Yet, during this last legislative session, Republicans passed a bill which is commonly referred to as the anti-critical race theory bill. It banned teachers from talking about current events, many current events, historical figures, and mandated that they teach opposing perspectives to historical events. This legislation is unclear and has left many teachers afraid to discuss important topics. Sheena, with the next legislative session, what do you think can be done to reverse this and to make sure that Texas students are learning accurate history in their classrooms?
Yeah, it's such an important topic. And, as Alex was speaking, it's evident, right? There is a group that has the authority and the decision-making rights and the knowledge and expertise to be able to help in the school system. And it's not the state legislation. It's not the governor. right? There is a
Mhm.
group of stakeholders who know what information needs to be done, how to execute on that, and we need to trust them, right? Stop deterring, stop creating all this misdirection and misinformation, and stop creating these unnecessary roadblocks to learning. This is really sad and scary. We are really starting to get over into an area not of democracy, but of whatever else you want to call this. And it's very scary at this point. So, eh, as a legislator, um, I believe that first and foremost, we need to listen to the constituents. I believe this past legislative session, as you mentioned, for the past 20 years, we've had one party in control. And that one party now is not just sitting back and allowing things to happen. They have a list of priorities that they're creating all of these changes and mass issues that really aren't issues. They're creating them kind of out of their own desire to make these radical changes. So, as a legislator, I want to ensure that we go in and we look to review what are the things that are truly issues and what are things that are not issues. Let's prioritize things in the right manner. Let's address the things that are real issues that impact people's pockets, that impact people's lives. Creating problems is not the job. We have 140 days that we're in session. We don't have time to create problems. There's enough problems, there's enough issues and concerns that we need to be addressing that really impact people, and not manufacture these problems that someone else is created just for political theater. It's really sad and scary, and we really need to get back to accurate information, the truth, transparency. There's so many things that are just wrong right now with our legislative body, and it starts at the top, quite honestly. And that same thought process is kind of proliferated throughout. So we really need to just get back to what the job is and concentrate on representing the people and the people's issues.
Sheena, we have a question from the chat. Why do you think that Republicans are so hyper focused on critical race theory?
It's a dog whistle, quite honestly.
Exactly.
It's just something to stir up fear, and division, quite honestly. And we don't need that. There's real issues, real problems. Again, there's only 140 days. I cannot stress that enough. 140 days every other year that they are in session. There's so many other things. I think I heard there was 7,000 bills that were brought forth in this past legislative session. Yet they went to their little playbook of list of the ones that really were going to stir up the base. And I think it was all methodical in anticipation of the upcoming election, quite honestly, the midterms, which is very sad and scary. Again, our children deserve better. We deserve better as Texans, and we need representatives who are going to do better.
Exactly.
And I don't know. So to answer the question, I don't know why.
Yeah. I think it's because it gets their base stirred up, and it's a election year, and they want to keep people fearful and angry.
Yes.
Because then they come out and vote, and the cost to our schools, our teachers, our students doesn't seem to be the priority whatsoever.
Not at all.
It's all about winning elections, which to me is really, really sad. Alex, the State Board of Education is responsible, like you said, for picking our textbooks and deciding on guidelines for the classroom. And we were kind of touching on this, but if you could go more into how you think the current state of Texas's far right politics is actually influencing the way the board is directing current school curriculums.
Sure. And I will also connect to the question an audience asked about why they're also focused on critical race theory. They're all connected. So SBOA shapes how your children learn and think critically, and how to do that with the curriculum and with the books that they're supposed to read, right? So it's a mass scale way of influencing or pointing the voters how they have to think, how they have to do critically, how they have to think critically. And it affects, overall, at the end, it affects your voting, right? So that is where the real issue is in there. So when you have a SBA member that is leaned more toward the far right, or the far right is influencing them, right? You could literally influence an entire generation of voters by influencing the SBA member, because that's how you actually change the curriculum itself. And when you change the curriculum itself, the children learn based on the curriculum. And if you influence the curriculum, you influence the voter for a next generation. Now, currently, there is a 9-6 majority. Republicans are majority by 9, and Democrats are 6. Now, some of those Republican SBA members are very supportive of the right wingers. As a matter of fact, my opponent in the general election seems to have moved more to the right. I see my opponent attending right-wing PAC-sponsored events where, banning books and talk about inappropriate material in the library. Those are the subjects of discussions. That's what they're doing. So yes, you're correct. The right winger can influence a lot, and they do that deliberately, because this is the way to influence the voter at a mass scale. Now, here's the real story. Every occasionally, there are some of the curriculums that are on the block for review. Next year, the social studies curriculum is on the block for review. And whatever is decided by the Republican majority in those curriculum, social studies, the history, and all of those, right? Whatever is decided by the Republican majority will be fixed for the next 10 years. And you can tell, no doubt, our history, our society's issues, the diversity will all be misrepresented or watered down in that curriculum. And that will be something that will be taught for the next 10 years. So if you have a daughter who's 8 years old, just third grade, just being aware of the social aspects, right? She will study that for the next 10 years. And in the next 10 years, she will graduate from high school. So in a sense, you have essentially created a generation of voters that got educated with that watered down version of the social curriculum. And they have started that early. This critical race theory and all of those dog whistle, as Sheena mentioned, right? These just started just a year ago in anticipation for this. So that is why, it is very crucial to make sure we bring balance to it. Right now, there's 9-6. If I get elected, it'll be 7-6. That's 7-8. That's a whole lot better than 9-6. So what we are essentially doing is, by electing the right kind of member in the state board, we're protecting our democracy. And not just that, we also make sure that we give priority to the teachers as well. And one of the things you mentioned earlier about the teachers, why the teachers are being treated such way. The real reason is the teachers are the obstacle to the Republicans' plot to do this mass creation of unaware voters, mass scale creation of that. The teachers are their main barrier. They, despite being given the lowest amount of resources in the history, they still manage. And some teachers are so dedicated, they even spend their own personal money to teach. They're that dedicated. So yes, of course, they will try to attack the teachers. They'll make sure that the dedicated teachers don't go into that profession. And then that way they'll be free to do whatever.
Wow.
So yeah, that is the real fact. So they started quite early on on the critical race theory, because with the anticipation of the social studies curriculum that is coming in up for review next year. So
that's something that people I don't think know about. So I'm so glad that you're sharing it with people, because that has definitely a long-term effect on not only our kids' futures, but our futures, because they're the ones that are going to be running the country. Eugene, are you here? Can we hear you?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Awesome. Yes, I can. Thank you so much.
Hey, this
Let
is
me
why,
catch up
really
with you.
quickly,
Uh-huh.
this is why we need to build back better infrastructure. I'm in rural Texas, in rural America, and you see how hard it is to just get a viable signal to do a panel. Just to throw that out there.
No, absolutely. And rural broadband is something uh Build Back Better. Also, a lot of the Democratic candidates are running in Texas with that issue at the forefront, because it really creates inequality. When these kids
Yes.
can't get online to do schoolwork, they're automatically put at a disadvantage. So that's definitely a big issue, not only in Texas, but in the whole country, and it affects education also. Eugene, I'm going to kind of go back a little bit and catch up with you. I know you've heard pieces of the conversation. We're kind of talking about the Texas public education system right now. You are the president of the Brazoria County NAACP.
Yes.
One of the biggest equality fights that we face in Texas is public education. Republicans are now embracing vouchers and school choice, which would amount to kind of a segregation of our schools to the haves and the have-nots. What measures do you think you would support to ensure that all Texas children have access to quality education?
That's very simple. We need to reinvest, and I want to say the key word is reinvest in our public schooling system, starting with raising our teacher salaries. I'm married to an educator. I sleep next to one every night, and I can tell you how many times, like the gentleman before me said, we've had to sacrifice resources out of our home to make sure students can eat at their homes, or to make sure a student can have a coat because it's cold outside, or some shoes. And you got to think about it. My wife has 17 students. So that's just one of 16. And then you have certain teachers that have 35 kids when you're only supposed to be able to have a 1/3 ratio. But because of COVID, because of the new parameters, or because of the people who haven't been in the classroom for over 20 years making classroom decisions and don't understand the real trenches of what's going on in education, we're at a pitfall. Before I became the Missouri County NAACP president, I was a special needs educator myself that dealt with children with special needs, disabilities, and the ones that they deemed couldn't behave or had behavioral concerns in general education. So I know personally, along with my wife, the inequalities that we face, and what we have to do is support, and give allocated resources. I mean, you have teachers are burnt out. Districts are trying to figure out how to maintain. For example, there's a bunch of federal funds that are being unlocked, that has been unlocked, but it takes your state government to accept those funds, because so right now we have a bigoted, racist governor that doesn't want to do business for anyone that's other than his party. We can't get the funds that the Biden administration or the presidential or the executive branch, let's just say like that, the executive branch has made available for our state and for our communities and for our teachers and our school districts. And when you couple that on top of with the CRT rhetoric, it just becomes a cesspool of unfathomableness, and our children are suffering for it. So that's the best way we can make sure that our children have very accessible means to education, is to make sure we hold those accountable to the educational experience. And I'm not talking about the teachers here. I'm talking about the people who fund the educational experience, the ones that are in their ivory towers, who don't understand what it's like being in the classroom in this open carry state now that we live in Texas, and you don't know fearfully who has a weapon, who doesn't have a weapon, who's having a bad day, who doesn't have it, who's not having a bad day. And we're so quick to blame the teachers. We're so quick to say teachers are, they're indoctrinating our children. Look, history was my favorite subject growing up. That's what brought me to politics, was 7th grade Texas history. If anyone that grew up in Texas, the first history they made us learn in 7th grade was Texas history. So I fell in love with this crazy cat from Tennessee with this raccoon hat. named David Crockett. Didn't look like me because I didn't have any heroes to look to. Even though now I know as a grown man they were black men at the Alamo. I didn't know that then. You see how important representation is. So we have to reimagine, we have to redo this whole educational experience and tell the truth, nothing but the truth. Like Dr. King said, the time is always right to do what is right. And to give a whitewashed version of history, a whitewashed version of American education is not where we are, and it's not where we're going.
Absolutely. Texas public schools just are some of the most diverse in the nation. Over 5.4 million Texas students are Hispanic. Or I'm sorry, there's 5.4 students total, 52% of which are Hispanic, 27% are white, and 13% are Black. Yet we have the Republicans passing the critical race theory bill. I think, did I already go over this part? I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself. Eugene, what can be done on a federal level to protect Texas students, the majority of which are minorities, from the rise of white supremacy and the false CRT rhetoric?
Well, it's going to take, and this is where I'm going to pull the coattails in the hearts of our allies, of our brothers and sisters that's not of my pigmentation. I'm a black man living in America. We've been dealing with racism and injustice for 400 years, documented 400 years. But one thing Dr. King said when he was in the Birmingham jail is the silence of the white moderate or the white liberal that is the biggest concern for our justice and racism fight. For you to sit idly by and be quiet, and you know CRT is not being taught in our schools. You know CRT is a dog whistle talking point. Today is January 28th, 2022. If you would have asked anybody in America, January 28th, 2019, what is CRT? They would have looked at you like you've lost something. But it's become such a talking point, a dog whistle. Just like when they tell black people, when your hair is unprofessional, you look too much not like us. When you have cornrows or braids or however they want to dictate, they use mechanisms and words to supplement racism, right? So they never want to be saying we're a racist, but your hair is unprofessional, or I'm not a racist, but what you have on today is not professional, or I'm not a racist, but you're teaching my kids that what we did to you all was wrong, which is just the accurate truth. I find it so hypocritical that I was in the 11th grade when our country was attacked on 9/11. And I remember how that felt. I remember all of that angst that the country had. And they're telling us to never forget. That was 20 years ago, but you want our community in America to forget that you enslaved a whole population for 285 years. And then after you enslaved that population, you made that population live under a Jim Crow standard, which is un-American. I'm going to put it the best way I can simplify CRT for all those that want to make this about 20 years ago, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, whatever the term is. Myself, someone that was born in the 80s, is the first generation of Black Americans with all of my rights intact at my birth. When my mother was born, she didn't have voting rights, she didn't have civil rights, and she didn't have fair housing. And my mother's only 58 years old. So it is very tangible that the seeds of slavery into Jim Crow, into segregation, still have plants and trees that were uprooted. We need to uproot and tear down. And until we come to the reality of, yes, bad things happen, but we can move forward because we want to be progressive instead of arguing over factual stuff that happened. Yeah, your grandparents were pretty bad people. They did my people pretty wrong. I get that. So how do we reconcile that? How do we understand that this is supposed to be the land of second chances? So white America, this could be your second chance to make amends, right? Instead of denial, let's come together. What makes us great is truly together. And that's what I think we should focus on. And CRT is nothing but a dog whistle to rile up a base that has for a party that is not running on a single platform. A single platform. So the platform they have to run on is get mad at black folks, get mad at Biden, get mad at these liberal Democrats, get mad, even though we said the election was stolen, even though we're all in the paper, even though we really tried to kill democracy. Don't look at us. Don't look at us. Look at this. Biden said he's going to nominate a black woman. Not like in 1986 when I was 3 years old, President Ronald Reagan said he was going to put the first woman on the Supreme Court. And it was applause, right? Donald Trump, let's go to 2016 when Donald Trump said, I'm going to replace a Gendrick with another woman. Where was the rash? But when you put that word black in front of something, you get the CRT response. So that is my response to CRT. Is nothing more than a dog whistle that these white denial is what this is.
Eugene, I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're fine. I was just going to point out that it's all Republican messaging, like you said, a dog whistle. But go ahead, Sheena.
No. I totally, completely. I am so grateful that Eugene, you persevered. You persevered through all of those technology challenges, because everything you have said is everything that we said, but man, in a more powerful way. So I appreciate you for speaking your truth, speaking the truth, and helping us all better connect the dots, because it is all interconnected. No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
Absolutely. Alex, I just want to check in with you because when I went back, I got a little lost on my questions. So did we already go over the right-wing politics affecting?
Yes.
Okay. Let me catch up, and we're
I'm sorry, that's my fault. It's Eugene's fault. I came in late and threw everything off.
We're happy you joined us, Eugene.
It was perfectly fine. It happens. It's technology. That's just the way life is nowadays. Hopefully, we'll get back to being able to all meet in person soon. We're going to go ahead and switch gears, talking about voting, which is a hot topic right now, especially in Texas.
The bedrock of our democracy.
Absolutely. The primary is just about a month away. Early voting starts sooner than that. Alex, why is voting for state board of education just as important as voting for, say, the president or the mayor of your town?
Absolutely. See, voting for the state board of education, the way you actually tackle the political issues is through mass scale education. Now, if you, as I mentioned earlier as well, if you vote for the wrong person or you put the wrong person in the board of education, then they will have the tools to uneducate or create a voter base that's completely unaware through the curriculum, to the selection of the curriculum, and which are more in tune with the political agenda of the far right than the actual education itself. See, one of the things Mr. Howard mentioned earlier, the problem is the silence from the moderate majority. That is a big problem. And that silence, the not voting, that's the part of it. You can't be silent by not voting. So we shouldn't be silent anymore. We should go out and vote. Because think about it this way. In the last election, when they lost it, right? When they lost the last election, they came in the conference room with unsigned martial law papers. But with this new plot they have to influence our social studies and to create a generation of unaware voters, next time when they come in power and they lose the election, they will walk in the conference room with signed martial law papers this time. And that will be the beginning of the end of our several hundred years of democracy. So That is why it is so important to make sure that we vote for the right person in the state board of education.
And it's not only on the federal, the presidential election, what we're seeing the GOP do, which they are, I will give them credit for being very sinister and sinisterly organized for decades. And now all their plans are coming to fruition. And one of which is taking over these local school boards, local city councils, and these voting, the people that are in charge of our elections at a local level, they are trying to infiltrate that and take over it as well. So I think that we are actually more in danger now than we were when Trump was in office. And because I think that because Biden is in office, people have gotten very complacent and they think, oh, well, we don't have to fight Trump anymore. So, we can relax now. And also people are absolutely exhausted, which I get. So I really appreciate you guys that have stepped up to run, because that's pretty much the building block of all of it. If we don't have candidates that will stand up for what's right, we can't vote for them. So I appreciate you guys. Alex,
Adrian, I wanted to add a little bit to that, about the silence part of it. And you are correct. There is a concerted effort to intimidate the school board members. I have, in our district, they actually bring hired people to come in and stare down the board members. And I've spoken to one of the sitting board members, the state board members. What was mentioned is that they have this group of people, very, very right winger. They fill out the room. They have the procedure knowledge to come in there. They literally stare down the board members. They will roll their eyes, look at them. So this is intimidation. This is completely against the democracy. So that's why I'm saying it is, and you're correct. We became very comfortable now that Biden, we have a democratic government. We feel that, our task is done. No, it's not. It is not. We have to show up into our school board meetings and make sure that we show that we are not the minority. The right wingers are the minority.
Yes.
They are the ones that's very vocal and intimidating.
If I could jump in here, this topic is near and dear to my heart. So, and not only have I been an election judge in the voting booth, election worker, obviously a voter, and now a candidate, but I absolutely agree. This is straight up bullying. It's adult bullying. And they have done this to us here in Texas for the past 20 years, and we have to fight back. We have to. And we can't get tired. I think Mr. Howard said it best. 50 years ago, right? They went through a lot to get us to where we are. And we took our eye off the prize. We assumed that people were gonna, have our best interests at heart. And we all became a little complacent. And I think they, on the other side, surgical precision, surgical. They have been playing chess while we have been playing checkers. And we have to get smarter. We have to, because they will continue to surgically put people in these places, and they are on down the road, and we are still fighting this misdirection that they're trying to convince us is important, when we really need to be paying attention to the other piece of it. And this voting piece is the piece. It is the bedrock, the cornerstone. We have to protect it at all costs. And that is registering people to vote, making sure that they have something to vote for. So this panel and all the other candidates that are out there doing good work and will fight for them, that's who we need to be behind. And we need to energize people to go to the polls and vote. The only reason why I think people aren't voting is because they feel like, what's the point? What's the point? We have to help them understand there is a point. We have to give them something to vote for. We have to make sure that they understand we have their best interests at heart, and we have to listen to them. We have to be willing to walk in somebody else's shoes and listen. We all know on this call that the GOP is not listening. They don't care. They have their own set of agenda. We have to convince our voters that we have the numbers. We actually are in control. We have the majority if we would collaborate together and do what needs to be done. We have to do it. We cannot get tired. We cannot let this just be one of those situations where we just sit this one out. We have to get energized and just do what needs to be done. I just cannot stress that.
Absolutely. And I think one of the side effects of everybody speaking out about voter suppression, which is so important that we were talking about it, but I think a lot of people that may be kind of casual voters got the message that, oh, now it's so hard to vote, or because it's so gerrymandered, I'm not going to bother. And we have to message that to exactly our Democratic leaders in each county have to get out the message that these are the new rules. They're not going to keep you from voting. You may have to do a little, extra steps, unfortunately, but we have to get that message out that yes, we're gerrymandered.
Yes,
But you know what you can defeat that with is voting. And that
absolutely.
is the only way that we get out of the position that we're in. Eugene, your district is down by the coast, correct?
Yes.
Do
Yes.
you think that your district 14 is on the cusp of turning blue, and how can you make that happen?
Well, I want to start by saying this. Very few generations are afforded the opportunity of defending freedom in its hour of maximum danger. As I sit here, we're all talking about voting rights. I want to be clear. Nothing's going to happen without like I'm a man of God, and that's not to say anything religious. I believe in the separation of church and state. That's just my religion requires me to love you no matter how you treat me. So that's the only reason why I brought that out, because we need to serve with compassion, empathy, sympathy of our brothers and sisters. And so when you ask me, can it turn blue? Yes, but faith without works is dead. We can talk about, we can strategize, but we got to mobilize, baby. We got to organize, organize, organize. Why? Because they have made a concerted effort to try to rig the game. And I understand, and this is why we need our allies we need to come together. Because one thing I can say about the African American community, we've had to be persistent. You're talking about being tired. Try 400 years. That's a long time of being tired of something, but yet we still fought. Matter of fact, it might be a little controversial, but I want to say it. I had one of my good friends. My campaign manager is a Indian Muslim woman, and she's a major superstar to me. And it was so funny because we got in conversations between our two communities, and I'm talking about allyship. And I said, you know what? Had it not been for the civil rights movement, all you boys wouldn't be here. It would still be a white man's country. But why the reason why I brought that up is because it took all of us to work together. And if they can keep us separated, you can maintain a house divided can't stand. So if you're in your corner and we're in our corner and they're in their corner, it's easy for them who have always been unified to take this group out, then take this group out. But then they got really smart and said, hey, let's make the groups fight each other, and we step back, and then we'll come in and pick a side here, pick a side there. No more. I have a dream that one day because you know what? Dr. King lived 5 more years after that. And you know what he was talking about when they killed him? The redistribution of wealth. He was talking about that dream became a nightmare. So that's how you turn it blue, because like empty rhetoric is going to go nowhere. Joe Biden has shown weakness. The reason why Donald Trump had the accolades in the black community that he did and other communities, because he wasn't worth nothing as a politician, but he showed strength. America has always been strong. I believe in a strong America. You don't want that is something, an ideology that we've all been birthed, that I create, that this land is blessed by God and we will be right. That's something that's embedded in every American. It's called the American experience. With that being said, we don't want that to be weak viewed. And right now, when Joe Biden doesn't protect the very reason why we elected you, the very reason why it was the highest turnout ever, we sent you there to protect voting rights. John Lewis voting rights bill is still right there. Freedom to Vote Act is still right there. And you have Democrats, and look where they are. Look from what region of the country they are. And look how they can say, I believe in what you want to believe in, but this filibuster we can't get away with, but you just got away with it 3 weeks ago to raise the debt ceiling. You can move it when you want to move it, but when it comes to getting rights and getting everyone access, and that's why racism isn't just in the Republican Party. Racism is in America. It is filtrated parties. Let's be clear. Elitism is in parties. Just like African American and minority candidates can't get funded, just like other candidates. It's real in the field, as we say. So until we start dealing with those issues, that's how they're going to keep it red. They want us fighting amongst each other, not coming together, not unifying, and realizing this is our moment. This is our hour. We will not tire. We will not go tirelessly into that good night. We're going to fight, baby. I come from a fighter's blood. My great, 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 great grandfather was a Union soldier. He fought for me to be viewed as a human and for everyone that believes in democracy and freedom. So that's the tenacity that I'm going to fight with, and I will fight for you. Give me your voice and I'll go fight. If you tired, put it on my back because I'm not going to give up because my kids ain't going to live in a meritocracy. This is still going to be a democracy where every vote counts and every citizen has certain inalienable rights granted by the Constitution.
Absolutely. Amazing. I just want to add, just touching on what you're talking about. Black voters are the Democratic Party backbone. They are the most reliable voters that we have.
And the least funded candidates.
It is an imperative that the Democratic Party on the Texas level, on the national level, uplifts Black voices and puts them in position of leadership.
Decision-making rights. We need decision-making rights.
Absolutely.
And I think one of the congresswomen said this best when she said, the people that are closest to the pain need to be closest to the power. We need that power, and we deserve that power. And so to Mr. Howard's point, we are taking our rightful place. And we are no longer going to sit by and wait for them to give us permission to do so.
And you shouldn't. Absolutely not. Because if the Democratic Party fails the Black community, there's not going to be a Democratic Party.
Absolutely right.
Like, that is our backbone. And I hope that all, especially white moderate voters, realize that. I want to
support us.
Absolutely. Support.
Yes.
And that means donating money also.
Absolutely.
You have to have campaigning is very expensive. We do have a question from the chat. We're running low on time, so we're going to get to that. It's stuck on the screen if anybody's. We're having all kinds of technical problems today. I guess Mercury is in retrograde or something. Alex, if the State Board of Education selects the textbooks and that the state ISDs use, is there a mechanism in place to prevent local boards from abandoning the approved text boards and kind of selecting their own? That's from Robert Vick.
Sure. So sounds good. Thank you, Robert, for asking that question. Well, it depends on how you look at it. Right now, the only mechanism is the power of the purse. So in other words, if you select a book at the state level, and if the local school district does not want that, then they will have to pay for their own books, right? So that's the only mechanism that we have. But, that's also a double-edged sword as well. We're not running a dictatorship. If there is a school board member, local school board, they really, really want to have their own point of view or their books. They feel so strongly about it, right? Well, feel free. This is democracy. Ultimately, the school board members are also elected officials, so they will have to be accountable to their voters as well, right? So yeah, to answer your question, other than the power of the purse, there isn't a mechanism, and we don't want to. We're not running a dictatorship. This is democracy as well. So, vote your voices. That's how it should be.
Awesome. Alex, I know that I've heard you say before, though, as far as Texas curriculum, right? What gets created here actually gets created on a mass national scale too. So there is that ripple effect or that potential harm more than just here in Texas when we don't have the right folks in the room to make those decisions on what the curriculum will be. That's going to impact generations.
Right. Absolutely. This is a very expensive process to select books. This is a long-term process, selecting curriculum and all. In a lot of the other states, they just simply follow what Texas does, right? So we're not only on the spotlight, but we have the power to influence the entire United States. So this is what it is. So that's why I urge everyone not to stay silent. To stay silent means not to vote, and so go out and vote, select the right person in the State Board of Education. This is so crucial. This is not just about a technical term of setting up the curriculum or so. This is affecting your entire democracy. So that's how important it is.
Extremely important. We're running almost out of time. I want to thank y'all so much for being here. It was a lively conversation and is giving me a lot to think about for sure. Before we wrap up, I want to give you each a moment and tell people where they can learn more about you and your campaign. We'll start with Eugene.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Live in Blue, Texas, as we are trying to live and surf through this blue wave that I see that's behind us on the screen. You can find me. My website is Howard, the number 2Congress.org. Howard, the number 2Congress.org. Howard, the number 2Congress.org. Where you can find my all my social media platforms, but more importantly, where you can financially donate to the campaign and also sign up to volunteer, whether you want a phone bank, block walk, send out texts, et cetera, et cetera. We're also looking for students that want maybe some college credit for working on a campaign such as this, on a congressional campaign. That would be awesome. My social media hashtags are Visionary Howard, one word, VISIONARYHOWARD. That's on Twitter, IG, and everything else, Facebook, LinkedIn. Is just my name, Eugene Howard. Thank you for your time, and I would love your support. Early voting starts on Valentine's Day, February 14th. So show me some love, baby, and come out and vote for me, and send me $1 or $2 on for early voting. Thank you all, and be blessed. And this was a very lively, engaging, and informative conversation. I hope to be brought back soon after we win the primary.
Yes, thank you, Eugene. Alex?
Thanks so much again for the opportunity. I agree with Mr. Howard. This was very lively. I really appreciate that. I don't think it's just me, but I think this time, this election season, we're all much more involved. I have seen social medias. I've seen a lot of involvement in there. So I want to end with a positive note that we're all trying. Voters are all trying. So this is very positive. I know we talked about lack of participation or so, but believe me, this is the time I've seen that we are most involved. Let's keep it up. Let's continue on. Let's notch it up a bit. That is fantastic. I love that. Now, to learn more about my campaign, just please go to my website. It's alexforeducation.com. Again, it's alexforeducation.com. I have the policies and I have issues that we can talk about. Those are all in there. And of course, I would appreciate campaign contribution as well. That's one of the main driving force. This is so that we would reach out to more voters, more participation, so that we don't have to stay silent anymore. That's the whole point of that. So again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Alex Cornwallis, thank you.
Thank you, Alex. And Sheena?
Yes, thank you all so much. This was such a great session. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the topics that we discussed today. I appreciate just the engagement of everyone on this panel. I am more fired up than ever. Every single time I'm able to talk with voters, every single time I'm able to talk with my fellow candidates, we have a strong Democratic ticket. We need to win this midterm. We need your help to do that. We need your help to make those changes that we all just talked about and how passionately we feel about each of them. In order to get that support, please visit my website, SheenaKing4Texas.com. I'm on all of the socials at sking4Texas. Please donate if you can. Black women are definitely underfunded, underappreciated, undervalued, but we are the backbone of the Democratic Party. And I so appreciate each and every one of you. I appreciate the folks who want to volunteer. As Eugene and Alex have mentioned, we need that help. We need that support. We are already at the time to have the primary. It will be February 14th. And definitely, I want to show light and love to Texas, but I need your help to do that. There are people who weren't able to join this broadcast today. Please reshare this information with them. They need to know that. And most importantly, help those people get out to vote. Please, please, please. We cannot do this by just staying home. It is too important. Our democracy, our whole everything is at risk right now in this moment. There is a sense of urgency. We need your help. SheenaKing4Texas.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sheena. Again, my name is Adrienne Quinn Martin. I want to remind our viewers the deadline to register to vote in the Texas primary is coming up this Monday, January 31st. So make sure you're registered. Thanks again for being here. Thanks for watching Blue Talk Texas. If our viewers could like and share this video so more people can learn about these amazing Democratic Texas candidates. Thank you all so much. Enjoyed talking with you today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Take care.
Thank you.